My family tried to erase me from our history, cutting me out of photos. The phrase echoed in my mind, a silent lament that refused to disappear. I felt invisible, forgotten, my existence denied by my own blood. The betrayal was a cold, silent scream in my soul, a wound that deepened with every photo album I leafed through. My name is Eleanor Vance, and at 70 years old, I should have been enjoying the serenity of old age, surrounded by the warmth of the family I built. Instead, I found myself in the living room of my home in Willow Creek, California, my hands trembling as I held an old photograph. It was an image from the last Thanksgiving, a moment that should have been about unity and gratitude. But for me, it had become a painful reminder of my exclusion. In the photo, Richard, my son, smiled beside his wife, Brenda, and my grandchildren, Sarah and Michael. Everyone was there, except me. No, I was there, but not in the image. My figure had been meticulously cut out, leaving a grotesque void where my arm had once been, hugging Sarah, or my smile, next to Richard. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was a statement. A cold, calculated declaration that I no longer belonged to that family narrative. The pain was physical, a tightness in my chest that stole my breath. I had dedicated my life to them, sacrificed my own dreams to ensure Richard's future, so he would have everything I didn't. And now, the reward was to be erased, as if I had never existed. The afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, illuminating dust motes in the air, but it couldn't warm the emptiness I felt. I wondered how they could do this, how they could look at those photos and not feel a shred of remorse. But I held a shocking truth about our lineage, a hidden secret, a fundamental piece of the puzzle that, if revealed, would expose all their lies. And their entire identity was about to be questioned. If you've ever felt the pain of invisibility, of family betrayal, or if you believe that truth always finds its way, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your story could be the next to be told, and together we can give a voice to those who have been silenced. The roots of a silenced matriarch. The house in Willow Creek was more than just walls and a roof. It was the sanctuary where I had poured every drop of sweat and love. When my late husband Thomas passed away too soon, leaving me with a 10-year-old Richard, the responsibility of being both father and mother fell entirely on my shoulders. I didn't falter. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and waiting tables at a diner during the day. My fingers, now aged and marked by arthritis, still held the memory of that tireless effort. Every dollar saved, every sacrifice, was for Richard. So he could have the best education, so he could go to college, so he would never feel the lack that I felt. He grew up, a brilliant and ambitious young man, and I watched him with a pride that barely fit in my chest. Richard graduated with an engineering degree, married Brenda, a woman who at first seemed sweet and caring. They built a prosperous life with a beautiful home and 2 children, Sarah and Michael, who were the light of my life. I was the present grandmother, the one who told stories, the one who baked chocolate chip cookies, and the one who always had a hug and a word of encouragement. But, over time, a subtle coldness began to set in. Small comments about my interference, disapproving glances when I offered advice, invitations to family events that arrived late or were conveniently forgotten. Invisibility didn't come suddenly. It crept in stealthily, like a dense fog. I became the silenced matriarch, the figure who was tolerated but not celebrated, the one who was invited out of obligation but not out of genuine desire, the one who was seen as a burden, not a pillar. But while they erased me from their photos, I held a secret, a truth about their lineage that could rewrite the entire history they tried to control. A secret that Thomas, my beloved Thomas, had entrusted to me on his deathbed, a revelation he asked me to keep until the right moment. And now, with the pain of exclusion burning in my soul, I wondered if the right moment had finally arrived. The dinner of exclusion and the seed of doubt. The invitation to Richard's birthday dinner, my only son, arrived by email a week before the event. Not a phone call, not a card, just a generic email, as if I were just another contact on a list. The date was a Saturday, and the location, Richard's favorite restaurant, downtown Willow Creek. I dressed in the same navy blue dress I wore to Richard's wedding, a dress Brenda always complimented, though her compliments had become increasingly rare. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and apprehension. The table was already full. Richard, Brenda, Sarah, Michael, and even Brenda's parents, the Millers, were there, all laughing, talking animatedly. No one noticed my arrival until I was standing by the table. "Mom, so glad you came," Richard said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Brenda merely nodded, and the grandchildren were absorbed in their phones. I felt a lump in my throat, but forced a smile. The evening followed a familiar pattern of exclusion. My attempts to start a conversation were met with monosyllables or were quickly diverted to other topics. Brenda and her mother, Margaret Miller, exchanged knowing glances, and I could feel the weight of their silent judgments. The climax of the night came with the toast. Richard raised his glass, and everyone did the same. "I want to toast my wonderful family," he began. "To my wife, Brenda, who is the rock of our home, to my children, Sarah and Michael, who are my pride, and to my in-laws, the Millers, who have always supported us unconditionally." He paused and my heart sank. I waited, but my name never came. Not a mention, not a recognition. I was once again invisible. The pain of that moment was sharper than any photo cut. It was the denial of my own existence, my contribution, my love. As everyone toasted, I lowered my glass, tears burning in my eyes. But in that instant of profound humiliation, a seed of doubt began to sprout in my mind. The secret I held, the truth about their lineage, now seemed not just a weapon, but a necessity. They had erased me from their history, but I had the power to rewrite theirs. The inevitable decision. The night of Richard's birthday dinner was a turning point. As tears silently streamed down my face, they were not just of sadness, but of a cold, growing anger. The public humiliation, the denial of my existence, the way Richard had erased me from his life and his family narrative, all of it solidified a decision I had been putting off for years. The secret Thomas had entrusted to me, the truth about their lineage, could no longer remain hidden. It was a matter of justice, of dignity, of reasserting my place in a story from which I had been brutally excluded. I returned home to Willow Creek, the darkness of the night reflecting the emptiness I felt. The house, once a refuge of memories, now seemed like a mausoleum of shattered dreams. I sat in Thomas's favorite armchair, the same one where he had told me the secret years ago. I remembered his words, whispered with a gravity that only the proximity of death can bring. He made me promise to reveal the truth only if Richard's family became unworthy of the legacy he had built. At the time, I couldn't imagine such a scenario. Richard was my son, my pride. But now, the unworthiness was palpable, with every cut photo, every ignored toast. The morality of my decision weighed heavily on me. Thomas had kept the secret to protect Richard, so he could grow up without the burden of a complex truth. But what they had done to me, the mother who raised him, the woman Thomas loved, was a betrayal that transcended any protection. I wasn't seeking revenge out of cruelty, but out of justice, for recognition, for a truth they had distorted and denied. The truth, after all, was all I had left. And by dawn, with the first rays of sun painting the California sky, my decision was made. It was time to unearth the past and confront them with the reality they had tried so hard to erase. the hidden clues, and the silent search. My first action was to look for the mahogany box Thomas had kept in his study. I knew he was a meticulous man, and if there was a secret, there would be evidence. The box was hidden behind a shelf of old books, dusty but intact. Inside, I found a series of documents, old letters, birth certificates, yellowed newspaper clippings, and, most intriguingly, a leather-bound diary in Thomas's handwriting. Each page was a fragment of the past, a piece of the puzzle he had silently assembled over the years. The diary revealed the story of a family intertwined with ours in unexpected ways. Thomas, an amateur historian passionate about genealogy, had spent years researching the Vance family tree. He discovered a surprising connection between the Vance family and one of Willow Creek's founding families, the Montgomerys. The name Montgomery was familiar. It was Brenda's maiden name, Richard's wife. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but Thomas had noted details that sent a chill down my spine. He described how, during the Great Depression, a branch of the Montgomery family had fallen into extreme poverty and, to avoid dishonor, had given one of their children to be raised by another family, the Vances, who were more prosperous at the time. This child, Thomas had discovered, was Richard's grandfather. The revelation was shocking. Richard was not a Vance by blood, but a Montgomery, adopted by a secondary line of the family. And most ironically, Brenda, his wife, was a Montgomery from a direct line, making them distant cousins. Thomas had kept this information to protect Richard from the stigma of adoption at a time when it was frowned upon, and to preserve the image of a pure lineage. But now, that same lineage was being used to erase me. The veiled confrontation and the escalation of tension. With the evidence in hand, the feeling of invisibility gave way to an iron determination. I didn't need revenge, but recognition, and the truth was my greatest ally. I decided that the first step would be to confront Richard, not with anger, but with the calm of someone who holds overwhelming knowledge. I scheduled a lunch with him at a small cafe on Main Street, a neutral place, away from Brenda's and the Miller's gaze. Richard arrived late with the expression of someone who would rather be anywhere else. "Mom, what's so urgent? I have an important meeting this afternoon," he said, without even looking me in the eyes. I took a deep breath, Thomas's diary heavy in my purse. "Richard, we need to talk about family, about our history." He rolled his eyes. "Mom, please, we've talked about this. You need to move on. Things change." "Yes, things change," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "And some truths come to light." I took one of the cutout photos from my purse and placed it on the table. "Why do you do this, Richard? Why do you try to erase me from your life?" He looked at the photo, then at me, a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. "Mom, Brenda thinks you're a little controlling. She just wants to protect our family." "Protect from what, Richard? From your mother's love? From the woman who sacrificed everything for you?" He looked away, visibly uncomfortable. "It's not that, Mom. It's just that you and Brenda never got along. It's better this way." At that moment, I realized he was a pawn in Brenda's game, but I had a card he didn't expect. "Richard," I said, my voice low and full of meaning, "do you know the true history of our family? The history of the Vances and the Montgomerys?" He looked at me, confused. "Of course I do. We're Vances. Brenda's a Montgomery. What's the problem?" I smiled, a sad smile. "The problem, my son, is that you are also a Montgomery, and your wife, Brenda, is your distant cousin." The shock on his face was immediate, a mixture of disbelief and horror. The seed of doubt had been planted, and I knew it would germinate, exposing all the lies they had built. The family storm. The revelation that Richard was a Montgomery, and not a Vance by blood, hit him like a bolt from the blue. His eyes, once filled with confusion, now burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "That's a lie, Mom. An invention of yours to manipulate me, to get revenge because I didn't give you the attention you think you deserve," he shouted, his voice echoing in the small cafe on Main Street. At 70, I had learned to remain calm in the face of storms, and this promised to be one of the biggest. "It's not an invention, Richard," I replied, my voice serene but carrying an authority he rarely saw. "Your father, Thomas, kept this truth his whole life to protect you. But now, with what you and Brenda have done, I feel it's my duty to show you the reality." With steady hands, I pulled Thomas's diary and the documents from my purse. "Here's the proof, Richard. The birth certificates, the blood type tests your father discreetly obtained, the detailed notes about the Montgomery lineage, and your grandfather's adoption." He hesitated, his gaze fixed on the papers. Doubt, once a seed, now sprouted on his face. He took the documents, his hands trembling slightly, and began to leaf through them. With each page, the denial in his eyes gave way to growing horror. The story Thomas had meticulously documented was irrefutable. Richard left the cafe in a state of shock, the crumpled documents in his hands. I knew he would go straight home to confront Brenda. The storm was just beginning. Hours later, my phone rang incessantly. It was Brenda, her voice hysterical, accusing me of being a crazy, vengeful old witch, of trying to destroy their family. "You won't succeed. Richard will never believe your lies," she screamed. But I could hear the fear in her voice, the uncertainty. Then, the Millers, Brenda's parents, called, threatening me with lawyers, trying to intimidate me. They tried to discredit Thomas, calling him obsessive and delusional. But the truth, once unleashed, cannot be easily contained. I maintained my composure, responding to each attack with the calm of someone who knows that justice is on their side. The family was in an uproar, but I, Eleanor Vance, the silenced matriarch, was finally being heard. The inescapable truth: Richard and Brenda's house, in an elegant Los Angeles neighborhood, became the epicenter of a family earthquake. The news of Richard's true lineage spread like wildfire, first among close relatives, then to the social circles the Vances and Montgomerys frequented. Richard, after a sleepless night and a frantic investigation of his own, confronted Brenda and the Millers with irrefutable evidence. He had researched Willow Creek's historical records, consulted genealogists, and, with a heavy heart, confirmed every detail of Thomas's notes. The truth was inescapable. Brenda initially tried to deny, manipulate, even cry and beg. "Richard, don't let that woman destroy our family. She's crazy, bitter," she pleaded, but her words no longer held the same power. The Millers, in turn, tried to discredit Thomas, claiming he was an eccentric man and that his discoveries were the delusions of an old man. But Richard, the man I had raised to value truth and integrity, was not fooled. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked Brenda, his voice choked with the pain of betrayal. "You knew that the Montgomery lineage you so cherish is not mine, and that I am a Vance only in name, adopted by a branch of the family you despise?" Brenda and the Millers' silence was the most eloquent confession. The impact on Sarah and Michael, my grandchildren, was devastating. They heard the arguments, saw the family disintegrate. Sarah, the eldest, a history student at UCLA, was the first to seek the truth on her own. She researched Willow Creek's records, found the same clues Thomas had discovered, and with tears in her eyes, confronted her father. "Dad, Grandma Eleanor was right. We are Montgomerys, but not in the way Mom and Grandpa and Grandma Miller always made us believe." The revelation shattered the identity they had built, but it also opened their eyes to Brenda and the Millers' manipulation. Justice, slow but relentless, began to manifest. The Millers, ashamed and unmasked, distanced themselves. Brenda, isolated and without the support she expected, saw her marriage crumble. Richard, his voice choked, called me. "Mom, forgive me. I was blind, ungrateful. You were always right. I'm so sorry for everything." At that moment, the pain of invisibility turned into immense relief. The truth, finally, had prevailed. A new legacy. The dust settled, but the family landscape had been irrevocably altered. Richard and Brenda divorced, a painful but necessary process. The Millers, their reputation tarnished, disappeared from Richard's and the grandchildren's lives. And I, Eleanor Vance, the woman who had been cut out of photos, was finally back at the center of our story. Richard, with the humility I had never seen in him, sought my reconciliation. He came to my house in Willow Creek, not with empty apologies, but with an open heart and a genuine desire to rebuild. "Mom, I understand. I understand the value of your truth, your love. You are the rock of our family, and I will never again allow anyone to disrespect you." My grandchildren, Sarah and Michael, also came. Sarah, with her analytical mind, had understood the complexity of the situation and the weight of the truth. Michael, younger, was confused, but sought comfort in my arms. "Grandma, why did Mom and Grandpa and Grandma Miller lie?" he asked, his eyes full of tears. "Sometimes people get lost in their own ambitions, my dear," I replied, hugging him. "But the truth always finds its way, and true love always prevails." From that day on, our family began to heal. Richard, now aware of his true Montgomery lineage, but with a Vance heart, dedicated himself to honoring Thomas's memory and rebuilding our family on foundations of honesty and respect. He included me in every decision, sought my advice, and, most importantly, celebrated me. At a new Thanksgiving, a year after the storm, Richard gathered the family for a new photo. This time, I was in the center, flanked by him, Sarah, and Michael, all genuinely smiling. There were no cuts, no voids. The photo was a testament to a new legacy, built on truth and unconditional love. Looking back at the pain of invisibility and the courage to reveal the truth, I realized that the hardest lessons are the ones that shape us the most. Life teaches us that the value of a family is not in blood, but in respect, loyalty, and the ability to love unconditionally. And that the truth, no matter how painful, is always the path to true redemption. If you were touched by Eleanor's story, if you believe in the power of truth and the strength of family love, leave your comment below, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that celebrate human resilience.